Don't we all? The 22nd novel, can you believe it, in the Jack Reacher series, Midnight Line, is out now in paperback, and the next book in the series that is going to be published in November is called Past Tense. I just looked up on Amazon to check the publication date, and I see that the book has already got a review somehow from someone called Susan Bailey, who says, "Good book, a great series, 5 stars." But maybe for the rest of us who haven't read it, you'll give us a bit of a sneak preview later. But would you also be watching the royal wedding if you weren't here now?
No, I would not. In fact, I was not invited, but a while ago I was invited to a, what do you call that thing? Jubilee.
Oh yeah.
2012, I guess it was. The Queen and Princess Kate invited me to a reception, and I said no because I already had a date at a library in Seattle. And I said I'd rather go there.
A good choice.
I'm not a monarchist of any kind. I mean, I've got nothing against them personally because I've never met them, but I think it's a bad system.
Yeah, well, we won't mention their names again for the rest of the year. It's a great pleasure to welcome you both here on the 10th anniversary of Crimefest, because you've both been supporters from the very start, and you were both involved in Left Coast Crime, which came to Bristol in 2006. You both came here then, and that was the forerunner of Crimefest, and showed that a crime festival might just work in Bristol, which obviously it does. And I just wondered, first of all, what you guys get out of coming to festivals like this, because I don't think really you need to drum up sales or anything, and possibly you could afford to send lookalikes if you wanted to. So why do you keep coming?
Well, I was actually thinking about that last night. I mean, partly there are two things I feel when I come to a place like this. I just love to meet people that read books, because it's a kind of self-selecting population. The nicest, the best informed, the most thoughtful, the most fun people are readers. So other than that, my year is very, very solitary. So I like to meet people that enjoy books. We're all in the same world. And I also like, I saw Jeff yesterday, and it really strongly reminded me of a feeling that you get amongst actors. Because as I said, I worked in television, and then before that I worked in the theatre, and I've worked with a lot of actors, especially in Britain. And they just have this tremendous relief that we're still working. It is a thing that it's an insecure profession, and I know that Jeff, certainly the people that started out around the same time, not all of them are still here. And so there is a sort of actorly sense of, oh, I'm still working. It's such a happy feeling.
Well, imagine to be paid to make up things for a living, to tell stories. There's nothing better. I knew from a young age I wanted to do that, and I'll echo these thoughts completely. I spend most of my time in a dark room talking to myself and my dogs. I mean, it's okay, it's the dialogue I'm working on in my books. It's not psychotic, not too psychotic. And to get out and see wonderful people, friends I've had like Lee for a long time, and meet many friends here. I'll also tell you too that it's very helpful to get feedback from fans. Now, we read emails that could be written by ex-girlfriends or whatever, and we never know if that's accurate. But I was at an event a few years ago, and a woman came up to me, an elderly woman, a nonagerian or whatever the 90s would be called, and she said, "Mr. Deaver, we love your books in our reading group at the retirement community, but we have a problem with this latest one." And I said, please tell me, I want feedback. And she said, well, it's about the violence, and we think you're going soft on us. She said, in your first book, you scalded people to death. This one, you just stabbed a couple of people. We want you to get back to your roots. Now, that didn't mean I then did these Saw kind of movies, but it's helpful. I want to get feedback. I want to see what people say about the book.
That is the most remarkable thing that I learned, is that especially older ladies are the most vicious and bloodthirsty.
Oh my God.
And probably many of you were here in, I can't remember, it was about 3 years ago, where you came here, Lee, and you interviewed Maya Chauvel, and you came across as a real fanboy then, and it's nice to see that other writers can still make famous writers like you fanboy.
Absolutely. I mean, what people forget about being a writer is they see your identity as a writer, and you're not, you're far more of a reader than a writer, always. I write 1 book a year, and I read possibly 200 or 300, and so I'm 200 or 300 times more a reader than I am a writer. And I intensely admire other writers. And, you know, the Mais Shawal and Père Walou series, the Martin Beck series it was, very old now, 65 to 75, they were writing 10 books only. And then Père died, sadly. And that is just probably the best detective series ever. It just totally invented the reality-based detective series. And my beef with Scandinavian fiction to a certain extent is it really hasn't progressed very much. That still is the shining highlight. And so for me to meet her is a dream come true, literally. I am the biggest fanboy when it comes to a thing like that. And we are of each other, all of us. You know, we read each other's stuff all the time. I read everybody that I know, partly to see, because when you sort of know a guy over the years, the book is the book, obviously, it's a novel, it's a story, but it's also a kind of letter. You know, I read Jeff's book, that is what is on Jeff's mind that year that he's writing it. And so at a certain level, it's a personal letter saying, this is what I was feeling that year. And it's fascinating to experience that, and I'm also thinking, is there anything I can steal from him? I'm thinking, what is he stealing from me? It is a wonderful thing. And then the thing that I like best of all, people say I'm very nice and generous to new authors, and absolutely not at all. I'm incredibly selfish about that. I love new stuff.
Yeah.
And I read new authors not to be helpful, but to, because new authors are where the energy is, where the excitement is, where the new ideas are. So there's nothing better than it. I love it when people send me new stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's the meat and drink.
When I teach courses in writing seminars, I think I did a little thing here some years ago that was very fun, and I like that, and I get a lot of it. And I steal things from my students too. It's very helpful. They're very creative. But you know, it's 4 hours of fairly intense lecture. But if I could distill it down to one lesson for my students, one word: read. And you would be astonished how many. I shouldn't put it that way. There are a number of students who want to have written a book. A number of students who want to have written a book as opposed to write a book. And, you know, they want to be J.K. Rowling now, or Lee Child now. They don't want to sit in that dark room for many years. You don't get into this business without having a love of books. And somebody who does not have a love of books and reading really isn't going to go very far if they don't. And I probably, like you, Lee, I get tons of books to blurb. Mm-hmm. And I used to give it, I don't know if you had a standard on this, but I would say 100 pages. Now in my old age, I'm giving it like 40 or 50 pages, but you can see right away who a reader is and who is not a reader, and that's what I think is so wonderful about this, you know, this whole process of diving into books. I think Ray Bradbury said you have to wear books on your head, you have to sleep with books, you have to carry them around with you, and that's what a wonderful life.
Yeah. And are there writers who make you fanboy even now? Do you meet them?
Oh, anyway. A few years ago, I was doing an anthology in, I think it was called Ice Cold for the Mystery Writers of America. And it was about spy novels. And I had sent on a whim, I was recruiting authors. On a whim, I had recruited several people I knew in America. And then I said, what the hell? I'm going to send a letter to John le Carré. I'll never hear back from him, but at least I could die saying I had sent an email to John le Carré. What did I get back but a 3-paragraph email from him regretting that he was not able to do it, explaining why, because he was in the middle of, I think, working on one of his television projects then. He was working on his new book. And, of course, who printed it out and framed it. It comes down to a rejection letter, but it didn't matter. It was from John le Carré.
It's amazing. Jeff, you famously, when that first Left Coast Crime I was talking about earlier, the first one, you basically composed a poem to celebrate, which you read at the Gala in 2006. And if you all have your programs, still, you will see on the very last page, inside that cover, the whole poem is printed out. And I'm just going to read a bit of it to you now.
Okay, please.
Yes, do. But you were talking about what people were saying about reading at the time, which is the theme of the poem. Apparently, people were saying in 2006, reading is going to die. Reading is dead, deceased, pushing up daisies. People are growing increasingly lazy, lured by the siren of electronic toys that fill up their lives with meaningless noise. And this was what everybody was saying at the time. And now here we are 12 years later, and it seems that reports of the death of the book were quite